Hey guys, it's me Anchor64 here with another video. This video is actually about not vanilla related content, and it is actually about TBC. So I thought I'd make a video, more of a comprehensive video, where I will be talking about which items you can bring into TBC, which will become pretty useful. So maybe you have like something, as some information, you can maybe use this as well and think about some of the different loot choices you can make right now to prepare for TBC. So basically, I looked at a lot of different lists and such. I saw there are a lot of videos already out there, but I think most of them are not really comprehensive. They mention a couple of items, and I thought, okay, why not make more of an like detailed list and mention like a lot of the different items for the different specs as well, not only maybe one. So this will be for tanks, healers and casters, and also of course melee DPS. So yeah, here's some different variety here. My script is pretty long, I have a lot of items mentioned here, and this will also more of an edited video. But yeah, that's pretty much that. Before I want to get started, I want to explain some of my rulings. So basically, I kinda thought about looking at the different build lists and such. However, when I saw you could pretty much get a similar item pretty easily from a dungeon or a quest, I kind of excluded that item. There are some exceptions to that rule, but that's mostly what I was going for, since I think it makes a lot of sense if you can get an item which is similar just from a dungeon or a quest, not even a heroic dungeon. I don't think it's really worth to mention it here. But yeah, that's basically that, and now we can actually start the video. First of all, I want to talk about tanks. This is probably pretty important as well. Tanks get a major overhaul in TBC. Not only is it like the normal spec we are using right now, so Fury Prod spec, there's only really one tank spec, to be honest. That is pretty much going away. We will have 3 viable, really competitive tanking specs in TBC that are going to be Feral Druids, which are probably also which are pretty much the best ones, especially if you consider like scalings, but not right at the start. We have Protection Warriors, and they are different. They are not Fury Prod skilled, they are actually Protection Warriors with a shield and one-hander. And then we have Protection Paladins as well. All of these 3 tanking specs are completely viable. They have different use cases, and yeah, there's like a lot of information about like tanking and such as well. Some of the controversial ones saying like Protection Warriors are not that useful, whatever. But yeah, that's not something I want to discuss in this video. I moreover want to talk about the items. The items are going to be a bit different than the vanilla ones we used to see, because for example, when we are Fury Prod skilled, we wanted some mitigation, but threat was really important for us. In TBC this will kinda change. So things, for example, being like defense capped is really important in TBC, as well as avoidance in general. Things like dodge, block, and all of the different fun things are really important in TBC. Bosses are going to hit way harder. It's not something where you can have like, I don't know, the tank may be dying or something. You can have like one Fury Warrior off tanking the boss for a bit or so. That's not going to be happening in TBC. If that's going to happen, yeah, the DPS will pretty much be one shot. So it's really important that we itemize correctly, and some of the items we have right now in vanilla which are underused will be helpful for us here. Basically, one of the first big items I want to mention here is of course Thunder Fury. Thunder Fury will still be relevant in TBC. The reasoning being the proc is just really useful, since you don't really need to use Thunderclap here. You will still use Thunderclap because the AoE damage will actually be increased massively, especially with the improved Thunderclap talent. And it can actually be some nice AoE threat you will have. However, still Thunder Fury perfectly to use in TBC, especially early on with you doing a lot of dungeons. So yeah, it's still very nice to use here. Next one I want to talk about is Mark of the Champion. This is a trinket you can get from Crusade. You can pretty much pick one. You will see this item many times throughout this video because it's insanely OP. So what it does, it gives you 150 AP against undead and demons. It is pretty much the best in slot threat trinket for Feral Druids. It is insanely strong if you can use it. For example, we will be doing Crusade a lot, and in Crusade most of the mobs are undead or demons. So yeah, really good to use there. So you definitely want to grab this. However, Protection Paladins want to grab something else. I will talk about this in a bit. Next one, we have Drakefang Talisman. Drakefang Talisman is just a general really good stat stick trinket, since the attack power is pretty much going to stay the same. The hit and also the dodge is going to be converted into ratings instead, which still will be a bit, they will be a bit nerfed. It won't be like they won't be so high as they were previously, like 2% hit. It's not 20 hit rating anymore. Actually you need 15 hit rating for 1%, so you would need like 30 for 2%, so it's a bit less, but still very useful trinket. Especially the dodge is really nice, and this trinket is really good also as well on feral druids. After that we have Stylene's Impeding Scarab. This was one trinket that no one really used in vanilla. It is really nice, however, in TBC, since it gives you a lot of really nice tanking stats. It gives you a ton of defense, a ton of block chance. It is really strong. So pretty much you get a lot of avoidance, you get a lot of defense. So it will help you a lot gearing up in TBC, starting out, hitting your defense cap and such. So yeah, pretty nice to use here. And yeah, no one really uses in vanilla. Maybe you gotten it pretty early on. I hope you didn't sell it, because it's pretty nice to use. This is mostly, of course, only for protection warriors and also protection paladins, since of course feral druids are not going to block anytime soon. So yeah, really good for them. Now I want to talk about something that is more specific regarding protection paladins. Protection paladins, first of all, they will be completely viable tanking spec. They are very strong for AoE as well. If you gear them a bit, they can also main tank stuff perfectly fine. However, their gearing choices are a bit different. They are actually the tanks, I would say, they have the most variety with their tanking choices, like their gear choices, and one of them being spell power stuff. And now I kind of want to go into spell power trinkets for protection paladins. First of all, we have Nefarian's Tear. This trinket is of course very good on casters, but it's also very useful for protection paladins. One thing you will maybe see some people mentioning is, yeah, go for just the tanking stuff for protection paladins and so on, and skip the spell power stuff, not really needed, whatever. One really big thing in TBC is of course threat, and especially protection paladins, they need to pump a lot of threat. So you kind of want to have a mix. Of course you want to hit your stat caps, and you want to be decently tanky, but you also want to have a ton of threat. So having different trinkets for different usages is really important. So for example, Nefarian's Tear perfectly comes into here because it gives you a bunch of spell power, and protection paladins will get a lot of buffs in that regard. For example, Consecration will scale very hard with spell power, and that's also where most of your threat is going to come from, especially in AoE situations. Next one, we have Mark of the Champion again, but this one is a different version. This one is actually the spell power one. So there are two different Mark of the Champion trinkets. One of them gives you attack power, the other one gives you 85 spell power. And you 100% want to pick the spell power one as a protection paladin. You don't care about attack power. However, the spell power one is really insane if you can make use of it. So of course for casters it's really good, and also for protection paladins. So that's another thing. Now I kind of want to glue two trinkets together. We have this Talisman of Ephemeral Power, and also the Zanalarian Hero Charm. Both of these are unused trinket, which give you big bursts of spell power. This is really important for protection paladins. I see a lot of wrong information as well on like generally stuff that they don't really need threat and such. Protection paladins, especially like well, people that have experience on them, pretty much know that you really need to have a nice burst amount of threat for the start. That is really helpful, especially on encounters like later on, like with Hydra and such, where you need to actually have a lot of trash on you. There will be a lot of AoE threat going around, like Warlocks, for example, having their Seed of Corruption will cost a lot of threat, and that's actually where Protection Paladins will need that extra help. So popping one of these trinkets and then doing a bunch of things at once, popping your wings and then doing a Consecration is going to do tons of damage, and also of course tons of threat. So this is really important for them. So these trinkets can be really nice for that as well. Protection Paladins are really burst oriented. Now I kind of want to mention also something that is a more, let's say, situational, but one really big important thing is the Wrath of Cenarius ring for Protection Paladins, as well as for some casters maybe. What this ring does is basically it will give you a huge amount of spell power whenever it procs. It will give you like 132 spell power whenever it pretty much procs. It's like a proc ring, which is kinda interesting. I don't think there are like a lot of these around. But basically, if you are tanking a lot of mobs and you are popping a Consecration, this will pretty much pop guaranteed. This is really useful for stuff like boosting and such, and if you are solo farming anything, this is pretty much a must-have ring, as well as being on some encounters, for example like Hydra again. This is really useful. So yeah, it's insanely strong. You should definitely try to get it if you want to try hard a bit with your Protection Paladin. Another thing which a lot of people mentioning is Skullflame Shield. Skullflame Shield will definitely raise in value once the pre-patch is hitting, but to be honest, there are other shields you can get for boosting and such. For example, the Sporigar shield is still really good, and would highly recommend everyone to farm that one on a Protection Paladin once we can actually go into TBC. One last thing, a lot of stuff over Protection Paladins. But they have like I would say most of the changes, to be honest. One big important thing you want to use as a Protection Paladin is also a spell power weapon, which is kind of weird. Like you see the other tanks using more like tank related stuff, for example Protection Warriors. But I think this is really interesting as well, that they have such a different choices of gear they kind of need to think about. My recommendation of getting a spell power weapon before TBC is launching is actually the End of Dreams. The End of Dreams is a mace. You can get that from Globulus. It has the same spell power as Wrathblade and is way easier to get. No one really wants this item, to be honest. And I think not a lot of people know how useful this can be on a Protection Paladin. And you see people like going for more defensive stuff. Spell power is something which is really important, and your weapon slot is where you get the most amount from. So 100% try to pick this one up. Also has a lot of stamina, so if you can actually reach all of your stat caps and such, and then use a really big spell power weapon, you will have a really good time in dungeons and such. Yeah, this is going to be really fun. So yeah, try to maybe look out for that item. A lot of people are looking at Locked Army and such, but this one is way easier to get and has more spell power. It's actually way better. For Protection Warriors, also another alternative is mentioning the Hungering Cold. The Hungering Cold, a lot of people are already clamoring that it is such an insane item, you 100% need it and whatever. However, for TBC, it is not that strong. One thing that is changing is that any weapon skill on gear is going to get translated into expertise instead, which is still one thing you 100% want to chase as a tank, because you can get so much expertise that you can make it so that you can't get parried anymore, which is really insane, and also dodged. However, there are better one-handed weapon choices. For example, you can get the Sun Eater when you are doing heroics, which in my personal opinion is a straight better weapon. It has a lot more useful stats, and the Hungering Cold is just really nice if you consider it as if you want to have a really nice threat weapon instead. But yeah, it has a limited amount of stats, only expertise and some stamina. It is really fast, but still, I don't think it's that strong, to be honest. But yeah, that was it for tanks, so we will go over to the next one. So next one would be healers. For healers, I don't have so many items, but I have some that I think are interesting. First item I want to mention here is the Cloak of Suturing. This one drops the next Ramas. This one is a really nice cloak, if you can get it. It is it has a pretty nice amount of healing and also general other stats that are pretty useful for you. So if you can get it, you can easily use this, and it only gets pretty much replaced by raid items. So yeah, really nice cloak to have. Next one is more of an interesting item, which isn't even from Nex. You could pretty much say you can use everything from Nex in TBC comfortably, which is pretty much kind of true. But some items are exception, and this would be one of them. The bracelets of Royal Redemption, which drop from twins, have an insanely high amount of healing, and they are really competitive. So you can 100% use them until you get something better in raids or like in Kara and such. So yeah, they are really nice. Now we have some trinkets I want to talk about. Pretty much, first of all, it's pretty clear that we have, for example, Rejuve Gem. Rejuvenating Gem is still very strong. It is pretty much a passive stat stick you can use. It has a lot of healing, and if you have it already, you can still keep using it in TBC. Same story with Eye of the Dead, if you can get that one from Nex Ramas. Also really nice. Has a pretty nice Onions effect as well. So yeah, both of them are really good trinkets. Now I kind of want to talk about a trinket which is talked about a lot, being really strong. But yeah, this one is Scarab Brooch. So Scarab Brooch drops in AQ, and the funny thing about this trinket is that it basically gives you a shield. Like you can use it, and whenever you pretty much overheal someone or heal someone, they will get a shield. And this trinket, of course, scales with fewer healing. So this trinket was actually so broken that they actually nerfed it in Cataclysm, and it was used in Wrath of the Lich King. But in my personal opinion, I would rather use something which is a bit more useful and gives you more stats and such, instead of using this trinket. It is pretty much just an unused trinket. It is not that consistent, especially in longer fights, and I would rather use something else, to be honest. But yeah, I just wanted to mention it here. One thing you can get, so where you don't really need to stress yourself that much, is a trinket that is kind of annoying to get at the start, but you will 100% have it, or have access to it, which is a Lower City Prayer Book, which you can get from Lower City Revered. This is of course an item you can get in TVC, but yeah, you will 100% get Revered, and this trinket is pretty nice. It has a huge amount of healing as well, similar to Rejuve Gem, and also a pretty nice on-use effect you can 100% keep using. So this is also kind of free, I would say. After that, now I want to talk about like two offhand items. You can get both of them drop in Nex Ramas. Both of them are really nice because they have a huge amount of healing, and you will be only replacing them by pretty much raid items you can get in TBC. So first of all, we have Sapphiron's Striked Eye, and then we have also the lesser version, which is North Rigid Heart. Both of them are really strong. If you can get them, just keep them, and yeah, you can then replace them whenever when you are getting something better in Kerosene or such. For Librams, I would mostly, like, if you can get the one from Nex Ramas, that's pretty nice. If not, you can get pretty good ones in quests and from quests on dungeons in TBC anyway, so you don't really need to stress it there. So yeah, that's kind of it for healers. Not a lot of gear, to be honest. There's like a lot of gear which you can pretty much get in quests and dungeons, which are pretty similar to like raiding gear, which you can get in vanilla. And yeah, there are just some exceptions, but I didn't really want to mention everything anyway. So yeah, let's get to the next one. So yeah, for the next one, I'm going to talk about casters. For casters, it's pretty interesting. I think I have actually a lot of items for casters, and yeah, because also there are like a lot of different caster classes. Generally, it really depends what you are playing. If you're playing a warlock, if you're playing a mage, if you're playing maybe elemental shamans, it's kind of different, of course. But here are some items which are generally strong, I would say, for everyone, which you can bring into TBC. First of all, I think one of the most important ones would be the Ring of the Fallen God. You have better options from raids and reputation in TBC, but this ring is really strong. It's also kind of guaranteed from Kafun, And yeah, if you really want to have a good item to bring into TBC, I would highly recommend this one. If you are a caster, this is just in general really good ring. Has some spell hit, has some nice big amount of spell damage. So yeah, definitely one thing you want to consider here. Same thing as the Band of Inevitable from North, which you can get in Next Rammers. Generally, you can kind of bring everything from Next Rammers. It's kind of decent. But yeah, same story there. For mages, they have something special. They can actually use a tier 3 Frostfire ring, which is also really good. Like if you can manage to grab that one, you can 100% use that as well. It's really strong as well. But yeah, now we get kind of to trinkets. First of all, we have Nefarian's Tear. I mentioned that before when I was talking about tanks, but again, of course, for casters, it's also really good. Even more so, since you can actually get some spell hit, you can benefit from the spell hit from this trinket as well. But yeah, nothing to be said here, to be honest. However, there is a trinket which you can get from badges, which you should kind of try to aim to get. But maybe if you have Nefarian's Tear, you can actually spend your badges on something else first, which is maybe a bigger upgrade. Really depends what you want to do. However, you can get the Silver Crescent, the icon of the Silver Crescent, which is a really strong spell power trinket, and that's also kind of free if you just keep doing heroics and such and get enough badges. One trinket that gets talked about a lot, is the Mind Quickening Gem. This trinket was pretty much drops in TBC from Velestras, so of course pretty early on. A lot of people were pretty much saying this trinket is really strong in TBC, but in my personal opinion, I don't really think so. You can make arguments for this, that it's strong for PvP. I would agree with that. One problem here, however, is that it is not 33 spell haste anymore. It's actually less. I think it's around 20%, so it gets nerfed pretty heavily. And I think there are just better alternatives around for PvE, which are a lot more consistent and will give you more damage. Because I think a lot of people are still, they have still the mindset where you do bosses in like 20 seconds, which is not really the case in TBC, especially not at the start. Boss fights are going to be a bit longer. So yeah, this is something you need to consider here. So you kinda need trinkets, which of course are useful for the whole duration and not like for one burst phase. One really interesting trinket here for Warlocks is a Black Book. This trinket was pretty useless in TBC, in Vanilla, sorry, but in TBC it also gets a bit changed, gets buffed a bit. So more pets and so on are included. You also get like new pets, so other Warlocks get new pets, and this can be very useful for like outdoor world content if you want to do stuff with your pet and such, because it will give you pet, of course, way better stats. It is not that much that it was before. It was like 100% damage increase for pets. It's of course less. It has just base stats. However, pets are going to scale with the Warlock stats. So yeah, this is of course way more useful in TBC than it was ever in Vanilla. So this is something you can look out for. Yeah, maybe try to grab this one as well. Then we have the Clock of Necropolis, something that is also really nice. It has really nice stats, even in TBC, but there are like better stuff in raids, but 100% you can pick this up. Also drops from Next Rammers. Yeah, one thing I didn't mention before, which I kind of forgot, but I want to bring in really quickly here, is actually for Paladins, the Scrolls of Blinding Light. This is a trinket which you can get in Blackwing Lair. A lot of people are pretty much saying, oh, this is really going to be really nice for TBC, especially for like Red Parlors and so on. But I don't think so. For example, for Red Paladins, which I will mention in a bit as well, when I talk about like melee DPS, you can get better trinkets. Like the Abacus is like way better than that one, and the 5-minute cooldown is way too much. For healers, you could make a point that you could use it, but I think again the cooldown is just way too much, even with the amount of haste you can get here. But yeah, Clock of Necropolis, pretty nice. Another trinket which is also pretty insane is the Mark of the Champion. Again, the spell power one. Whenever you can use it against undeads and demons, you should 100% use it. It is a really nice trinket as well. But I mentioned this one previously as well. Now I kind of want to talk about weapons here. First of all, we have one big legendary weapon, which is RTH. RTH, of course, really depends on which class you are playing, and I would say it is really nice for mages and warlocks, because these versions actually give you the biggest benefit. For example, for warlocks, each of your party member gets like 33 more spell damage, which is pretty nice. And for mages, they all get like some critical strike rating, which is also pretty nice. The biggest upgrade, however, the biggest importance of this staff is, of course, you can make some gold with it. And for your whole group, you can pretty much port them to Crusade, which is insanely useful. So I would recommend having like at least one in your guild, which is going to play TBC with the same character. And yeah, that one is going to be really nice. One big problem we have, there's pretty much one staff you can get which is better than RTH, kind of. However, like in raids, I mean, however, the meta is going to be that you are actually going to use a one-hander and then your offhand, because that one is going to be way more damage. There is one really insanely strong one-hand sword in the game, which is the Magus Blade, Bloodmaw Magus Blade, which is insanely strong. It gives you 203 spell damage, some crit, stamina. It is insanely loaded. And yeah, you get that one from Gruul. So this is something a lot of people will chase. It's also what you need to compete with protection paladins, for example. They also want to have the sword. Yeah, it is really good. And then you would use maybe some offhand and you would get way more spell power. That's kind of the meta you will see in TBC, for example. So yeah, that's kind of it. In general, casters have a lot of items. To be honest, I can consider bringing into TBC. Generally, if you have stuff from Nags, you can perfectly use it in TBC as well. But yeah, there are again some exceptions and some like items which are a bit better. Okay, so that's it for casters. Let's go to the last spot, which would be melee and physical DPS next. Okay, now we have melee and physical DPS. For them, they have, of course, also a lot of items they can choose from. First of all, I want to kind of talk about something special here, which is the Might of the Scourge enchant, which you can drop from Sephiron. It's really weird, but Sephiron has the ability to drop some shoulder enchants, and this is pretty much the best enchant you can get in TBC. It is so good, yeah, that's even the best one in TBC, which is kind of funny. Something comparable would be the Alder Scryer shoulder enchants, which you can get, but that one will take a lot of time. So if you want to min-max it a bit, you can maybe try to stock up on them and try to maybe save them for a really good pair of shoulders you get in TBC and then just use them on that. But yeah, really depends what you are going to do. My theory is going to be that people are still going to do some next Remus runs in TBC as well, especially if we get GDK piece back. And yeah, because some of the items are of course still very useful in phase 1 content in TBC. The next items I'm going to talk about are some of the trinkets we have. So the first one is going to be Mark of the Champion. Yeah, pretty much a no-brainer. Whenever you are fighting demon or undead, you can use this. This is an insane amount of attack power, and like for pretty much every melee physical DPS, this is going to be a really nice and useful trinket. Next one we have Slayer Crest. The thing about Slayer's Crest is it is actually really nice for TBC, even more so than another trinket I will mention in a bit. But yeah, Slayer's Crest in general is just a pretty nice, on-use, huge attack power trinket. Nothing is going to get changed about this trinket. It will still remain the same amount of attack power. That is something that TBC keeps. That's also why trinkets like Mark of the Champion are still so relevant, because yeah, they aren't going to get changed. Attack power is still going to be the same. However, of course, you have raid options, which are going to be better than Slayer's Crest, and also you have Bloodlust Rouge, which you can grab from 41 badges, which should be one of your first trinkets you should probably get. Unless you're maybe thinking it's not really that worth if you already have Slayer's Crest. One other trinket, which I talked about a lot, is Kiss of the Spider. In my personal opinion, Kiss of the Spider kind of loses out on a lot of value in TBC, since all of the things are pretty much going to get converted into ratings instead. So we are going to lose the like hit, crit, and also the haste, which of course is not something Slayer's Crest suffers from. So I would say Slayer's Crest is kind of the better trinket in TBC. Kiss of the Spider is still really nice, and I will 100% keep using it until I get like another trinket. But yeah, this is just something I want to mention here as well. The last trinket I want to mention here is Badge of the Swarm Guard. This is a trinket that gets kinda transformed completely in vanilla. There's not really a lot of usage cases where we can use this, unless our rate is kinda trolling. So what I mean by that is, basically how armor works in vanilla is, if you have all of the decent debuffs, like what I mean by that is you have, for example, improved exposed armor, you have Curse of Wreck, you have Verifier on the boss, you can get the armor so low that it's almost zero. And of course, if you're using this trinket, which only will pretty much reduce the armor, only also for yourself, it's not really a damage increase pretty much. However, this trinket was still really useful on trash, where not everyone is going to use all of the debuffs, and also like things like, for example, twins and such, where you don't really have the time to apply all of the debuffs. So that's something to consider. That's where this trinket was really useful. In TBC, however, the armor amount of the boss is going to get increased massively. We can't really reduce the armor so low that it's almost zero with just debuffs. So this trinket will actually get a lot of value just from that alone. One big problem of this trinket, however, the duration is pretty short. It's only like 30 seconds. So that's something you need to consider. In fights where the fight is like taking longer than 40 seconds, it is not that valuable anymore, and you would rather be off using something else, like a Bloodless Brooch or something else entirely. So yeah, this is something you need to consider as well. Later on, you will get access to more armor penetration, and then this trinket won't be getting used at all anymore. But yeah, still insanely useful. A lot of people are trying to chase it. Me personally, I'm also trying to get it, but I still haven't gotten lucky. But yeah, maybe next reset, who knows. Now I want to talk about some additional items as well. First of all, we have Prester's Talisman of Carnivory. This one is pretty interesting because it gets kind of changed in TBC. It loses out on some of its agility, like it loses out on 5 agility. Instead, it gets a lot of attack power, actually 22 attack power, and it also still gives you that hit rating. However, it's only 10 hit rating, which is less than 1%. Still, this is really useful for hunters. If you are a hunter and have this item, I would recommend you just keep it and try to get something else when you are like raiding in TBC and such, and maybe get a neck and there you can upgrade from. Yeah, pretty nice neck in general. Then we have 2 other items I want to talk about. First of all, I want to talk about Band of Unnatural Forces. I talked about this item in my prioritization video for warriors. This is your Fury Warrior previous ring. It is really, really strong, since the amount of stats are just really nice. Gives you a lot of hit. Actually not a lot of hit, but yeah, like 10 hit rating. The amount of attack power is really nice. And of course you get some crit as well. The problem is, why this ring is so strong, there are not really a lot of good options pre-bis, pre-raid bis. So that's why this ring is still very, very good. So you would 100% use it. It's a really nice ring. And then in raids you can actually get better rings and from your badges and such. But yeah, definitely a really nice ring. Next one we have, which is also going to be the last item I'm going to talk about here, is actually going to be Gressel. So Gressel is pretty much the best one-handed weapon we can get right now in vanilla. Has the highest amount of damage, and in general looks also pretty sick. But one really nice thing about this weapon is that it's one-handed and not main hand only. So we can actually use it to be a lot more flexible, especially for warriors. What I mean by that is you can use this, you can bring this into TBC, it's still going to be really competitive. Until you can maybe craft your blacksmithing mace, like your Drakefist hammer, and then you can put this one in the offhand and just use your Drakefist hammer, and then you can replace your offhand with something either like the arena weapon, or you can use Spite Blade if you have that one. So yeah, this is something you 100% can consider doing. So that's why Crusade is actually like really useful. One other big thing is, I will probably make a separate video about this as well, but for warriors some things will change, and we really want to focus on getting two really slow weapons in our when we are dual wielding, so in our main hand and offhand, and that is something that is really important. I think rogues, they probably still want to use a really fast offhand weapon, so might be not a good idea to use Crusade there. So yeah, but I'm not too sure about that. Good. So these were kind of all of the items I've listed here. I have on my list. Of course, I didn't mention every item that is going to be useful in TBC. Just some notable ones, I think, which are going to be pretty nice, and you can keep collecting or keep getting. Again, some of the items I didn't mention either because you could get better ones or like similar ones from quests and such. So that's why I didn't mention them, or they're like way too hard to get in general compared to the like upgrade you would kind of get. But yeah. If you have any other questions or suggestions or whatever, feel free to ask them. I probably also forgot some items, but that's kind of the way how it goes. Like there are so many items to think of. And if you like these kinds of videos and want to see more stuff and so on, feel free to subscribe and like, and I will see you in the next video. Have a great day. Goodbye.